When it comes to Pokemon spin-off games, you probably think of games like Pokemon Mystery Dungeon, Pokemon Ranger, or even older classics like Pokemon Stadium. What you probably don't think of is the Pokemon Rumble series. There are 4 games of the Pokemon Rumble series, 5 if you count the mobile game that barely lasted a year, starting with the first Rumble game released for the Wii eShop as a download-only title in 2009. The whole premise of the Pokemon Rumble games is you have these Pokemon toys that came to life, and they go on missions to recruit other Pokemon and defeat enemies. It's sort of like a simplified but faster-paced mystery dungeon, since all you really do is rush forward and mash attacks as much as you like, kind of like how you would in the Warriors games like Fire Emblem Warriors or Hyrule Warriors. Despite its simple and arguably mundane gameplay, I've always really liked the Rumble series. I remember being so excited for the first game to come out on the Wii. I've played all of them except for Rumble World on the 3DS, which is weird since that one is free, but more on that later. Now you might be thinking, to have 5 different releases over the course of 11 years, this series must be pretty popular, right? That's more games than the Ranger series had, and almost as many games as Mystery Dungeon, but despite having the Pokemon name attached to it, which makes it seem like it would just print money, Pokemon Rumble as a series only sold about 1.6 million copies, roughly. The data's not exactly all there. Now that wouldn't be bad for a single game, but this is the whole main series of 4 games, since the free-to-play one on 3DS did have a physical release as well. To put things into perspective, the PokePark series, which only has 2 games, half of what the Rumble series has, sold 2 million units. In fact, the vast majority of Rumble sales come from the first 3DS game, Pokemon Rumble Blast, which sold 1.4 million copies. Now, sure, some of the charts only account for Japanese sales and aren't entirely accurate since it's a relatively niche game, but do you know how many copies of Pokemon Rumble U were sold for the Wii U in Japan? It's the worst selling Pokemon game by a long shot, with a whopping 11,000 copies sold. Now, sure, it being on the Wii U and being a digital-only game might not help it, but surely there's no way this game made its money back. Even Learn with Pokemon Typing Adventure for the DS sold more in Japan than Rumble U did. Now, to put things into perspective, I ran the most accurate and comprehensive test there is to see how popular Pokemon spin-off games are. I made a poll in the YouTube community tab. I included mostly older or less popular spin-off games, and Rumble had the least amount of votes. It even had less than PokePark. Yes, PokePark. Now, I've never played the PokePark series, but you can't tell me it's better than Pokemon Rumble. So with the low sales and nobody really caring for Rumble, you might think, wow, these games must suck. And no, to be honest, it's quite the opposite. Let's take a look at the Pokemon Rumble series, which includes Pokemon Rumble U for the Wii U, the worst Pokemon game in terms of sales, and see what these games are all about. First, we have the first Pokemon Rumble game, aptly named Pokemon Rumble, which released for the Wii in 2009. Last I played this game was apparently over 10 years ago, so let's just start up a new file and see how this game starts. We start off as a weak little Rattata toy that comes to life with the magic wonder key. It's not really explained too much in this game at all, so let's just go with it. And we break into the Battle Royale fight, which means that technically Pokemon beat Epic Games to the Battle Royale genre because this game predates Fortnite by like 7 or 8 years. Our little Rattata instantly loses the Battle Royale since we aren't even supposed to be able to challenge them yet, we just sort of snuck in. But these Battle Royale games are what the whole game is building towards. What you're supposed to do is go through various dungeons that have Pokemon that we can randomly recruit along the way, leading to a final boss fight at the end. In the case of the first level, it's Ivysaur, the ever so intimidating seed Pokemon. Recruiting new Pokemon is cool and all, especially seeing how all these Pokemon look like as little chibi toys, but the Pokemon you befriend stay at the same level that you caught them at, meaning you have to constantly swap out your Pokemon toys for stronger ones, and if you really like one, you gotta get rid of it in like 2 levels. Let's swap on over to my old save file in Pokemon Rumble that's nearly complete, and when I load it up, we're controlling a Giratina, which is awesome. We can also take a look at all the Pokemon that I have captured in this game, which has every Gen 1 Pokemon, every Generation 4 Pokemon, and nothing in between. There's shinies in this game too, which I don't remember getting at all, like the shiny Rattata and a shiny Bidoof. With a Mew as well, which I guess is cool. There's a gacha system to get new Pokemon randomly, like this Kabuto, and since we're on the farther save file now, we can do the Battle Royale mode with our Giratina. Unlike the regular levels, the battle royales take place in an arena where we battle waves of Pokemon until some bosses appear. Since Giratina is, well, a Giratina, we beat this battle royale in 2 shakes of a lamb's tail, and I even broke my record for fastest battle royale completion after not playing this game for 10 years. Nice. As a digital-only game on the Wii released right in the middle of the Generation 4 timeline, Pokemon Rumble is a fun little spin-off game. It's kind of a pain to play now though, since the Wii eShop is down, but as the first game in the series, it's solid and had me really excited when I first heard of the sequel, Pokemon Rumble Blast for the 3DS, released in 2011. This was the first physical Pokemon game released for the 3DS, and for most people this was probably their first time playing Pokemon Rumble if they ever played Pokemon Rumble at all. The gameplay itself in the game is similar to the first game, except this time your Pokemon can level up, they have special traits which are kind of like abilities in the main series game, and there's an overworld for you to explore that's not just a room with some random options like the first game had. I really love the title screen and intro of this game too, since it's so serious, and the art on the cover of the game is great too. All of these Pokemon look so serious despite being chibi toys, and then there's Palpitoad. You don't look like you belong here, Palpitoad. When I loaded up the game for the first time in years, I didn't notice a way to start a new game, so we'll just continue from where I left off, which might have been 8, 9, or even 10 years ago. Turns out we're a Scraggy in Toy Town, one of the 5 overworld villages. There's NPCs to interact with in the overworld villages too, some of which can help us out with other things like Muna, who you can give passwords to in order to unlock certain Pokemon toys depending on how far you are in the game to make it a bit more balanced. The core levels of this game are similar to the first game, with you exploring through a mostly linear dungeon with a boss at the end, in this case a Zebstrika. We can also switch our Pokemon in the middle of the dungeon if we want to, but if we get hit while switching, it cancels out their switch. This can be used to save our lives or switch into a different Pokemon that would have the type advantage. You don't heal after each battle, however, and instead have to heal in the towns with Glow Drop fountains. Glow Drops have the power to remove rust or damage from Pokemon toys in this game, which play a big role in the game's story since some of the Glow Drops were being stolen at the start of the game. Much like in the first game, all of these dungeons lead up to battle royales, which are also a lot like the first game. You just mash your attacks as hard as you can, avoid large crowds, and would you look at that, I got a new record again in this battle royale mode. Out of all of the Pokemon Rumble games, this one is the most expansive in terms of what it has to offer, which is why I consider the first 2 Rumble games best in the series, and Rumble Blast the best in the whole series. Then in 2015, they did it again. Nintendo released Pokemon Rumble World for the 3DS, adding 6th generation Pokemon to the world of Pokemon Rumble. This is the only Rumble game I've never played, despite it being free to play, or rather, free to start. You see, around 2015 was when Nintendo started to release these free games on the 3DS, which were basically mobile games, but on a 3DS instead of a phone. A few years later, Nintendo would finally start making actual mobile games once they realized that a lot more people would carry around something like a cell phone as opposed to this. Now there is a physical version of this game you could get that has all the microtransactions unlocked. I just played the free one since all the stores near me didn't have the physical one in stock, and with the 3DS eShop hanging by a thread, and it's gonna be closed any day now it seems like, there isn't much time left to get this game for free anymore. So starting this game out, it's quite different from Rumble Blast in terms of how it's structured. First, we appear in the Kingdom of Toys with a bunch of other Miis. This is the first time a Mii has appeared in the Rumble universe, and there is a King Mii here who tasks us with capturing 11 unique Pokemon toys, since some mysterious magician brought him 10 and we have to one-up the magician. In the dungeons, our Mii just follows us around but can't fight. It can occasionally throw potions at us, which is rather helpful, and like in the previous games, we can swap between Pokemon in the middle of a level. The king is proud of us when we beat the tutorial level, but we still need to find more species of Pokemon. In order to do that, we must purchase hot air balloons with our diamonds to take us to different areas with more Pokemon. These diamonds are given to you throughout the game, but you can of course buy some with actual money from the eShop, or at least you used to be able to since you can't even load money onto the eShop anymore. I ended up getting the hot air balloon that has a lot of water Pokemon since our best Pokemon right now is a Trico. There are 3 separate water-themed areas this hot air balloon can take us, although one has a Flaffy. The game just randomly sends us to one of the 3 islands, and we can use our diamonds to pick a specific island, but that seems rather wasteful. But I can also see it being very frustrating if you constantly get sent to the island you don't want to go to. When I complete the island for the first time, we still need to recruit some more Pokemon for the king, so I go to the water area for a second time, and this time there's a 10-second cooldown we have to wait for before we can drop. I don't see too much of a point in this cooldown, but we can spend 1 diamond to just depart now instead of waiting only 10 seconds. They really weren't kidding when they said, free to start. After a few more runs through the dungeons, we find 11 unique Pokemon to fulfill the king's first request. We get some diamonds as a reward, and then the magician appears and sends us to a special level. This isn't quite like a battle royale, but it's more battle focused compared to just getting to the end like a traditional rumble level is structured. We eventually make it to the boss, and it's a Mega Alakazam. Seems pretty powerful for the first boss in the game, but our trusty Sea King is able to take care of it. After we win, the king thanks us, and in order to do another mission for the king, we have to wait until tomorrow or pay diamonds to get another mission right now. Doing the king's mission seems to be the main objectives of this game, but this game does have some extra things you can do, like visit a move tutor, find some megastones, and dig for diamonds, since you're only allowed to buy 3,000 total diamonds from the eShop. I guess that makes it a bit better since you're capped on how much money you can spend, so the pay to win aspect is limited. But this is basically just a mobile game, a 2015 mobile game at that, on the 3DS. It feels kind of like Rumble Blast, but a more watered down version of it. But since it's at least free to start, it's the easiest way to get in the Rumble series for now, at least while the 3DS eShop is still up, because a year from now, it might not be up at all. And that leads us to Pokemon Rumble U, the game that inspired this whole video, as it is the worst selling Pokemon game by a large margin. And part of it can be attributed to Rumble U being a download only title, meaning unless you check the eShop regularly, you probably wouldn't know this game existed. Now, one cool thing they decided to do with Rumble U is release these NFC figures of Pokemon Rumble U characters. I managed to get a couple of these when the game first came out, and they function similar to Amiibo just about 2 years before Amiibo came out on the Wii U. You can scan them on the gamepad like I did with this Jirachi and get the Jirachi in the game. I also had this Zoroark one, but this one's broken. These things can be pretty expensive nowadays, but not as expensive as the Pokemon Rumble cards that released alongside the first game. I probably should have talked about this sooner, but there are actual Pokemon trading card games that have some board game associated with them, but I only got them because I saw them in the store, liked Rumble, and liked Pokemon cards, so I picked them up. I'm glad I did though, since these are some of my rarest cards that I own now, and I just really like the way that the Pokemon Rumble models look. Now back to Pokemon Rumble U. Now, in terms of the actual game, they really changed up the formula with Rumble U. In terms of the story, I think it's the most coherent in this series, as it starts off with a store owner dropping a box of Pokemon toys in the river that eerily resemble the actual Rumble U toys that were sold in real life. I thought that was a pretty nice touch. Then somewhere down the river, the toys come to life and battle, of course, or should I say rumble. I couldn't start a new game on this game either, so I continued on where I left off in like 2013 or 2014. And was thrown into a battle royale. There's a ton of Ampharos just being sent out, like an overwhelming amount of Ampharos being sent out, but we have a team of 4 Pokemon this time, and still got destroyed. It's nice that we have team members to help us out in this game, and you can even play local multiplayer on this game with up to 3 friends, but let's be realistic, if you owned a Wii U at the time this game came out, you probably didn't have 3 other friends to play this game with you. I went back to an earlier level after that, and this game is just the battle royales pretty much. No dungeons, no overworld, just battle royales with your team of up to 4 Pokemon. I guess the idea of being able to play local multiplayer is pretty cool, but this makes Pokemon Rumble U the mashiest Rumble game out there, since there's just so many different Pokemon on the screen that your only hope is to mash the A button and hope you live. You could level up your Pokemon toys this time though, which is nice, and you have to replay some stages in order to level up, which is a little tedious. To be honest, this was the Rumble game that I played the least for this video, since it really wasn't as fun as I remember, and definitely not as fun as the previous 3 in the series. The art style and aesthetic is great as always, as Rumble games are just cool looking to me. And I'm not surprised that we never got another console release of Pokemon Rumble since Rumble U came out. There is one final Rumble game though, sort of, in Pokemon Rumble Rush, released for mobile devices in the summer of 2019. I played this game a bit when it came out, and it went back to a more traditional Rumble gameplay compared to Rumble U, but this time had limited time events, challenges, and some levels that have time limits, hence the name, Rumble Rush. From what I remember, it was a fine game, but it released around the same time as Pokemon Masters, which was just more popular, and Rumble Rush shut down only about a year after its release, which is pretty terrible for a mobile game. Nintendo tends to do this with their mobile games though. Even if the game isn't a complete failure, if it isn't a smash hit like Pokemon Go or Fire Emblem Heroes, they just shut it down. And that's Pokemon Rumble. Definitely one of Pokemon's weirder spin-off series with a unique history that did have a lot of firsts for Nintendo though. Rumble U sort of had the beta to Amiibo, while Rumble World for 3DS came out at the start of Nintendo experimenting with microtransactions and mobile games as a whole. Overall, it's a decent series with some good games like Rumble Blast on 3DS, then some odd ones like Rumble U. If you're a Pokemon fan, I definitely suggest trying out these games if you still can. Now it doesn't look like we'll ever see another game in the Rumble series, and with the mobile game being shut down, the Wii, 3DS, and Wii U shops being basically done for, it means it's a lot harder to play some of the Rumble games, with the only Rumble game that's still easily accessible in its full capacity is if you find a copy of Rumble Blast for the 3DS out in the wild. This is an issue with game preservation as a whole, as while digital games can be very convenient, once those digital stores that sell these digital games go down, those games can be just lost to time forever, with no official way to play them.